That was so interesting. Thank you for enlightening us. I'm now so pleased to invite everyone to participate in a first at a FOS conference, and this is our first. It's going to be our first in a lot of ways, Dana, but it's our first hands-on workshop where everyone in this room is suddenly at a training. Did you know that? We're all going to be training at the hands of Ms. Dana Chisnell. So it's a first for FOS. It's also, I think, the first time we're ever going to do origami at this conference. I'm pretty sure. I should have brought my 7-year-old. He would have loved it. But that's going to be a good time too. So these firsts are being brought to us by Dana Chisnell, who many of you know is a pioneer in civic design. She is co-director of the Center for Civic Design, where she and her team have mapped out the voter journey with the goal of ensuring voter intent by design. Many of the election officials in the room will know that she's the managing editor of the field guides to ensuring voter intent. Who has field guides in this room? The books that I'm seeing, yes, hands. I had these at my desk for a long time. I love your field guides. You know, the 7-year-old stuff takes up so much room. I'm going to ditch the Pokemon cards and start bringing this. Dana teaches a course on design in government at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard and also at the University of Minnesota. And she has a title that I just think is so cool. When she worked at the United States Digital Service at the White House from 2014 to 2016, she was generalist problem solver, which I think is probably applicable to a lot of people in this room, although perhaps not at the White House. So we are so pleased to get our origami session started. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Catherine. That was funny. Let's see if I can make this work the way we planned. Get it, Michelle. Yes, I love it when a plan comes together. Hi, everybody. Technology, stick with paper. I am so delighted to be here and to see all of you. This consortium is really special. I'm tickled to be at this particular family reunion, way more tickled than I would be to be at my own family reunion. I'm especially honored to get the chance to show you all some of the work that my team at the Center for Civic Design has been doing through FOS and funded by Irvine over the last almost 5 years. I don't know if you know our origin story, a little history. There we were, minding our own business. We were independent consultants working in the private sector, doing various different kinds of user research and usability testing kinds of projects. And by we, I mean Whitney Quisenberry, who is my co-director and co-founder at the Center for Civic Design, and me. We were out there doing a smattering of government work here and there. Like Whitney worked on the VVSG. I did a little research at NIST. And then one summer day in 2013, everything changed when Doug Chapin, who we'd worked with on some of the work funded by the MacArthur Foundation and housed at the University of Minnesota Humphrey School, emailed us both an announcement about grant applications to do research to help this new consortium called the Future of California Elections understand the challenges that voters on the low end of engagement face in getting and understanding information about elections. So Winnie and I get on the phone to talk about this, and we scoped out the work together. We realized right away that if we got this award, this would be pretty much full-time work for the next couple of years. And our hobby would stop being a hobby. So we formed a 501c3. We won the award and we formed a company, but at the time we thought it was kind of a boondoggle. We're like, hey, this is a 2-year grant. When the grant's up, we'll just fold the company and go back to what we were doing. Now it's 5 years later, and we're planning for our future. We're all about ensuring voter intent, as Catherine mentioned, and to do that, it's our mission to build skills and capacity inside election departments to help election administrators solve their upstream and downstream problems to deliver the best possible voter experience. We call this open source design, and it's because of FOS and other key players like the Democracy Fund that we can do the work this way. But FOS really launched us. So I want to thank FOS for giving me the chance to do the thing that I love every single day. So thank you for that. As we look at as we look at impact, there's no question that the world of election administration and voter experience is way better for FOS existing. This is not true only for California. While election administrators in California have been eager adopters of the work that we've done together, all of you have set a standard across the country. Election officials and advocates that we work with in other parts of the country want what you have right now. And honestly, they're glad that somebody else went first. So we've had incredible partners, starting with the League of Women Voters, who worked with us on the very first project, and CACEO and NALEO and Disability Rights California and Asian Americans Advancing Justice and lots more, and all of the leadership that has ever worked for FOS. So to all of those people, including the secretaries, all of the folks who are full-time career people in the Secretary of State's office and the political appointees, I want to thank you so much for happy collaborations over the years. So before I show you some of the things that we've made together, I want to show you how some of that work got done. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to get to experience what is called usability testing. This isn't the only method that we use, but it is one of the most important methods that we applied in this work, and it's time that we exposed its secrets to the world. So, at least this world. It's super simple. The recipe is basic. You need an individual who is your audience or your user, while you watch and listen as they use a thing that you have designed or written to reach their own goals. Last year, we counted all of the usability test sessions or the interviews that we'd done with voters and poll workers and election officials, just people on the street, since 2012. And mainly through our FOS and Irvine funded work, we've heard nearly 1,000 stories over that time. And those stories helped us make some design decisions, make all the design decisions that went into the tools and templates that we're going to show you later. So this is a really powerful tool, and you're going to get to experience it. So let's do a little activity. At each table, I need 2 people to volunteer. You can stay at your table because there's no need to come up here, but 2 people to act as participant and moderator. And at each table, there's a little kit. There should be something that says study script, a square piece of colored paper, and an origami pattern. So find that at your table. Gail, I need you to work with John on this one. I swear this will be fun. Okay. Everybody found their kit? Any table that doesn't have a kit, raise your hand. Okay. So you only need 1 script, 1 origami pattern, and 1 piece of origami paper. But if you have 2, that's awesome. 2 sets will be great. The idea here is that 1 person acts as the interviewer or the moderator, as we call this person, And we need the second person to use the instructions to make an origami shape. We call this person the participant. They're not the subject because this is not a psych experiment, contrary to how you might feel at the end of it. It's a design practice, and the participant is helping us understand why a thing works or doesn't work for real people. So when you have your moderator and your participant, would those people hold your piece of paper in the air, please? The rest of the table should be observing. Good, good. Please hold. So, for the folks who are not a participant or a moderator, you should be paying attention, taking notes, and the things think about and watch for questions that the participant has, comments that they make about what's working well and what's not working well, because the moderator is going to ask you to think out loud. And what seems frustrating to them, or what might make them happy in this process? I'll give you a hint, the happy part is rare in this kind of exercise. Okay, so moderators, you probably want to skim through the script, but as soon as you're ready, go ahead and start going through it. Participants, you're going to use the origami instructions and the origami paper to try to make the shape. And I'll give you a few minutes to do this, and then we'll come back, okay? Yeah, start with 1. No. Okay, let's bring it back. Shh. How'd that go? One person, what was it like to be a participant? Somebody want to talk about that? Frustrating. Humbling. What kind of problems did you run into? Okay, lack of information, don't know how to do this kind of fold, back in the back. Okay, no good way to model for the person, yes. Terminology, yes, you win the gold star. Thank you. So this is where I transition to talking about how we do this to people in elections all the time, right? Thank you very much, by the way, for doing that activity. So there are specialized terms and jargon sprinkled all over elections, right? Like all the way to, we think early voting is intuitively obvious, but to voters, it's not. Partisan is a vocabulary term that regular people don't actually understand. So partisan contests is not helpful to them. So we assume that there's a baseline of civic literacy out there that people just don't have. And this is why so much of the work of my team has been about plain language. Usability testing, like you just did, is one way to find out, is the language plain enough? So one of the things that I'm super proud of is our small part in the California Bill of Rights revision into plain language. We didn't set out to do this. It sort of happened by accident. In the research world, we have a fancy term for this. It's called an incidental finding. And the germ of the idea, though, I think was hatched when we were testing voter guide prototypes in Berkeley with some folks who were in an adult reading program. And one of the participants, Jen was there, one of the participants who we've come to call Bill, I don't actually know what his real name was, learned that he was eligible to vote even though he had been incarcerated. And that moment changed his life. It also changed our work in some pretty big ways. And so thanks to a lot of people, including the League of Women Voters Education Fund in California, and my research partner, Whitney, who went and did this work while I was at the White House, the Plain Language Voter Bill of Rights became law when Governor Brown signed it in the summer of 2016. So, like, that was a really big deal. It's not every day that something that we work on becomes law. So that's pretty cool, but it actually is a tiny part of the work that we did with the League on understanding information challenges of California voters. One of the biggest insights that we got from that work was, as others have talked about, was just how deep and wide the gap is in civics literacy out there. Not just for voters in underserved communities, but also for voters of all kinds across the state. The second massive revelation that has driven all of our work is that the system of voting, what happens in the polling place and what to expect, is invisible. People are dropping out in part because they don't know what to expect when they get to a polling place. So through this research, we have taken apart the behaviors of voters and non-voters, and we've looked at lots of themes and tried to meet information needs across those different behaviors. We knew from some research that we had done in 2012 leading up to that presidential election, roughly what voters' questions were, and they're not what you think they are. We could talk about that some other time. And at that time, we had applied that to election websites, but we heard all of those questions again in the dozens of interviews and the usability tests that gave us an information architecture for voter guides. And those look like, they start with a quick reference. So things that point you to little bite-sized pieces of information that give you clues about what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. Information about ways to vote that tell you what your options are clearly and succinctly. Information about dates, not 30 days before election day, but what the date is and what the deadlines are. What to expect, and candidate and measure overviews that give specific information that's easy to scan. And so, as design sometimes seems to be the science of the obvious, the next obvious step seemed to actually look at California voter guides and sample ballots and see what was working and what wasn't, and how could we use the voter guides to address those two big insights around civic literacy and the system being invisible? And what we saw was dramatic differences in approaches to voter guides across the state. So we made some prototypes and we tested them just like you tested today in dozens of communities with hundreds of people, one at a time. And we refined the prototypes as we went along to try to eliminate the problems and the frustrations that people were having. And we used those page types that I just showed you to work on specific plain language content as well. And so what you're seeing now are some examples of those voter guides improved based on the research that we did from a few counties. These are from Nevada, Santa Cruz, and Fresno. These are pages about ways that options for you to vote that show slightly different layouts and slightly different typefaces, but they all have images and they all have quick lists that are easy to skim and scan. They're from Madera, San Diego, and San Mateo. Instructions for voting, you think you don't really need this, but one of the ways that we demystify voting is just to show a simple diagram of how to mark the ballot that you're going to get when you get to the polling place. These are great examples from Nevada, Santa Barbara, and Madera. And finally, because California loves its measures, um, having ways of presenting the information that gives a little snippet, we call a bite, a snack that gives you slightly more information, and then the meal, if you want to go read the full legislation, is really important. And the presentation of that, so that it is quickly readable, is a big deal. These excellent examples are from Santa Cruz, Orange, and Yuba counties. So in those first couple of years of research, we interviewed about 100 people in a half a dozen communities. Thanks to the League of Women Voters, we got introductions practically everywhere. And we learned that people at that time, at least, got a lot of their information about elections from family and friends. These are trusted people in their circle of social life, but also that expanded out to social media. And we saw that grow massively leading up to the 2016 election. The people who aren't voting mostly don't even know where to start asking questions. And we also found that there are ways to address the civic literacy issues within the voter guide, but you have to make it clear from the outside of the guide that those questions will be answered inside the guide. Because otherwise you are stuck in the 17-second test of going from the mailbox to the recycle bin. We wanted to reach hard to reach people who were not registered to vote, people who were not easy to find on a list. And so we went to them. We literally went into neighborhoods and talked to strangers on the street. It was really fun. It was really challenging. It was often exhausting, and we just learned so much from meeting all these awesome people. And the League was instrumental in introducing us to those communities. So thank you for that. It all paid off, because where we ended up was, with League, we developed a best practices manual for creating voter guides. And together we generated templates and samples and design guides. These are all available on the League of Women Voters of California Education Fund website. And we also made a field guide-like guide that is available on our site. And with the League, we made and delivered a bunch of webinars that are recorded and available on the website. Anybody can use them to learn how to use the voter guide templates. So that's a lot of stuff just on the voter guides, but there are bits and pieces of content that go inside the voter guides that address some of the jargony issues that we have in California, like top two primaries and the candidates nominated by voters. Anyway, we also work closely with a few counties. Thank you, all of you, to help them get to plainer language in describing top two primaries and a couple of other things. And a bunch of counties across the state have picked up those materials and used them in their voter guides. We were super excited to see what would happen with the voter guide prototypes out in the wild. And so we set up a pilot with Shasta, Santa Cruz, and Orange counties to actually use our templates and put them into the hands of voters leading up to the June 2016 primary. By the way, nationally, only about 9% of jurisdictions send voter guides or something like them directly to voters ahead of elections. Only 9%, according to the EVES data from Charles Stewart III. Yeah, and you can guess where those are. You know, it's California, Washington, and Oregon, and a few spots otherwise. So this is a thing to do well and to get right. You're setting a standard, and the California guides are now best in class. So both counties were picking up the practices, but as I said, what we live for is building capacity internally to election offices. So branching out to the other counties meant that we needed to make some new friends. And so we did that by showing up. We went to CA CEO meetings and to their new law conference in 2015 to test out the concepts. And we invited counties to ask for help. We didn't just send the templates out and say, okay, you're on your own now. We said, if you want help, call us up. We'll be happy to help you. And we spent a lot of time working on that, and it was great. We learned a lot. People took us up. And then some amazing things started to happen. After reaching about 40 counties out of the 58 through that work, counties started picking up the templates and actually using them. And not just those counties that had attended training or done the webinars. I don't know how everybody else heard about them, but they did. And leading up to the 2016 presidential election, at least 45 counties used at least some part of the templates in their own voter guides. So that was uptake that we are super proud of and was way more than we expected. So then in last summer in 2017, we went back to CA CEO, this time to do some work on the Voter Choice Act bits and pieces. I'll talk about that in a minute. We asked counties, so one of the things we did was we contacted counties ahead of time, especially the SB 450 counties, and asked them to bring materials with them that we could look at and talk about when we met up with them. And we immediately saw, when they brought their stuff, that they had not only picked up the voter guide templates, but they had used the templates and the design guidelines on other stuff, like poll worker manuals. So this is really cool. For us to see this is a sign of design maturity, that the templates helped counties move from basic literacy to some fluency to pretty close to mastery. I mean, it's the moral equivalent of giving you a recipe and having you try it out a couple of times, and then after that, you just go get your own ingredients and use the essence of the idea of the recipe, and you're good to go. So we love that. And seeing good design and good design practices propagating as teams, as election departments look for better ways to do things is what we live for. So when the Voter Choice Act passed, we were delighted to see more opportunities for voters' needs to be met and their questions to be automatically answered. And this gave us a chance to do some work that we wanted to do for a long time on vote by mail, on poll worker and vote center support materials, and some notices and forms. These are the unloved step children of elections. And I think that we've got to a place where we have a few patterns for you to follow that will help you. So we've been watching vote by mail grow for a long time, not just in California. And we knew from those observations that votes for vote by mail are much more likely to be lost because voter makes some mistake that leads their ballots to not be counted. In fact, we did a little study with with the help of some friends in 2008 in Minneapolis after the Senate recounts there, when the Secretary of State realized that most of the ballots that were challenged in the recount were voted by mail. And when we helped them improve their instructions to voters over the next elections, vote by mail ballots were much more likely to be counted without being challenged. So a whole bunch of other jurisdictions picked up this thread too and solved some of the problems around signatures and receipts. So based on all of that work and what we learned across all of our studies, we worked with Oxide Design and the California Secretary of State's office, all of the vendors who print envelopes and mail them around, and the USPS and probably some other people who I'm not thinking of, to take into account the state's legal requirements, the postal requirements, all of the new needs that come with VCA, and including supporting languages, and still made a beautiful, usable vote-by-mail package. We've tested this thing out the wazoo, and pretty much everybody involved feels pretty good about it. And we're excited to be seeing them used in the primaries this June in a few places. We're hoping that they perform the way we expect they will. Thanks to the National Science Foundation and direct work with a couple of states in addition to California, we've had the opportunity to observe poll workers in dozens of places across about 20 states or so over the last several years. And a thing that we know, this may be surprising to you, but a thing that we are pretty confident about is after training, nobody looks at the manual. Sorry. We also know from our research that instructions are way more effective when they're at the place where they're needed. And so when FOS and Irvine gave us the chance to develop some materials for vote centers, we jumped on this to see what we could do to implement what we are pretty confident will be good practices. So we created 3 pieces that we are excited about, and we know that counties are starting to implement already in time for the June primaries. One of them is a thing that we call placemats because they're laminated sheets of paper that are about the same size as a placemat. But the idea is that they show what's in the bin or in the canvas bag and where to put it at the station for optimal efficiency for the election worker and for interacting with voters. This is just an example, but as part of making those, we also created a massive library of line drawings and icons to represent all of the equipment and forms and other things that you have as part of putting on an election. And so even if you never use the template for the placemats, the icons will all be downloadable and you can use them for whatever you want. The idea is you can just drag them and drop them into a place. Next, we created some role-based, task-based, wearable checklists. So imagine if your check-in clerk had a checklist on their body. I don't mean a tattoo, although that would be kind of cool. But on a lanyard, right, at the end of a name tag. How much quicker and easier would it be for them to do a good job? So we've developed these for what we think are typical roles in vote centers, but we're pretty sure they're going to be useful for precinct voting as well. So what you're seeing is the front page is the name badge, including the languages the person speaks. And then these are all quarter-size sheets, so they're exactly the same size as your name badge that you have on today. And you can bind them together with a simple key ring and put them on a clip on a lanyard that you can wear. And then they're oriented, so when you hold it up to yourself, the type is right side up. So you don't have to, twist your arm to read it. And it's all in PowerPoint, so it's really easy for you to customize. Finally, there's what we call the survival guide. In reviewing hundreds of poll worker manuals from across the country and what we could download from California, troubleshooting information is in the wrong place. It's all together in the back of the manual, and that is not where the trouble is. So we want to pull that stuff out. A bunch of counties in California have something they call what ifs, and that's the kind of information that we would put in these, again, quarter sheet size flashcards that you can modularize and put together or take apart and stack in the place where they're needed. So for the technology ones, you could have one right next to the ballot marking device for accessible, for voters needing accessibility. Or you could have them right next to the ballot printing station to deal with all the technology there. But they cover all the situations that you might use for scenario training, for example. VCA also gave us a chance to work on helping election officials to talk about conditional voter registration and try to make that as clear as possible. We are proud to have had a tiny little hand in helping to develop the voter notification card ideas, and then trying to plainify the provisional voting notice that goes to voters when there's no other option except to vote a provisional ballot. I think it's pink, isn't it? Okay, the pink receipt. So in December, we made it to Sacramento to a New Law conference, and this time we wanted to use the event to test out our prototypes of all the things I just talked about. You can see my colleague Maggie here talking with friends who are actually in the audience about the prototypes. We gave our pitch, and everybody was really nice about listening to them, and they seemed to get excited about the materials. But we had a hell of a time getting feedback. Here's a little zoom in so you can actually see what size they are. So we came back and we were like, nobody's talking to us. Were we pushing too hard? Was it too hard to sell? Were they just not ready to focus because they're still working on site selection or some other sets of issues? Or was there something else happening that has nothing to do with us and everybody's just paying attention to that? We've had good relationships with folks before, so we were kind of disappointed that we were not getting anything, and we were sad. So we started calling individual counties and talking with the people who recruit and manage poll workers, and probably will be the people who manage vote center workers. And this is what we heard. Everyone over here was impressed with these materials, and we'd be pleased to use the templates for our SB 450 training material. The clean look, easy organization, and ability to quickly get information where all elements were pleased with. We were pleased with. This is good stuff. We're going to use it. No, we don't actually have any questions about it. And this is what we got from nearly everybody that we asked, but we also think that it's not necessarily that we got it right, although I'm pretty pleased that we did, but that this shows the evolution of election administration in California. From our point of view, the one that looks at using design tools and methods to understand and meet users' needs, we are this close to feeling like our job at the Center for Civic Design is done. That as a state, you've gone from being in the dark ages about plain language and usability for all the stakeholders involved in elections to a highly evolved, well-coordinated, human-centered exemplar. From simpler voter guides in the tiniest counties to better materials in polling places in the Bay Area and the Central Valley to VSAP in LA. We are really proud of you all. And to do this in just a few years, pretty evenly across such a large and populous state, it's remarkable. It means that all the right things had to be present at the right time. And this is largely due to the work of the Future of California election. Now, if you have seen our templates and you would like to use them, we would like to look over your shoulder while you customize them so we can see if they are actually usable by you. But we're hoping to also get out into polling places and vote centers leading up to the June primaries so we can see the pieces in action. Like, did we actually get it right? Because you never really know until a thing goes out into production and it interacts with all the other stuff that's happening. And we've started to pull things together into a toolkit just for California. So we would like to, because we love you and you deserve the best, we want to make, we want as many people and as many counties to use the materials as possible. And we want them to live on forever after we have stopped working with you all the time. And so we created a website where anybody with a CA/CEO credential can log in, download materials, create their own variations, and add them back to the library if they want to. You'll be able to create new tools and templates and add those as well. So I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough. So we created some categories here at the top, just for some basics about using the materials, a collection of notices and forms, including affirmations, some stuff for vote centers and polling places, vote by mail, and of course everything you'll ever need for making voter guides. And so if you click on the icon in the middle for vote centers and polling places, you get to a page that looks like this. In this case, we've listed the 3 things that I just talked about that we made. And if you click on the middle one, you end up at a page that looks like this. There's a little description and an example of what the thing is, and then there are ways to download the materials in different formats and information about how to use them, and a place to keep notes about who made the template versions and summaries of changes from version to version. Now, we didn't make all this up. We actually stole this design from electiontools.org. And if you don't know about electiontools.org, this is a fabulous website that is run by the Center for Technology and Civic Life. And we worked with them on it, and it was funded by the Knight Foundation. It's really beautiful. So start with electiontools.org, and then if you're a California election official, we'll be launching this toolkit just for you very soon. Because the whole idea here is that we want to do open source design. We want to give you the tools and empowerment to deliver the best possible voter experience. So all the things that go in there are going to be things that are tested, that support best practice, that you can customize for your particular situation. And this is all for free. Because democracy is a design problem. Even when we're done in June, the Center for Civic Design will always be here for you. Give us a call if you get stuck, and keep up the good work. Please stay in touch. Thank you. You bet. Questions, please. Everybody got that? Yes, you're welcome to the origami. There's probably more paper.
Hi, I just have one really short, simple question. You say that the toolkits and so on are tested. I am curious to know, did you actually field test any of it with real poll workers as opposed to the election officials? Because the poll workers is where, you know, it hits the road.
Yes, exactly. So yes, we always try to do testing with the intended users. And so, yes, when I say tested, I mean with the people who will be using it in real life. Sometimes the situations that we do the testing in are not ecologically identical to an election, which is why we try to set up pilots with jurisdictions before we roll out to a larger audience. So, yeah.
In California, there are many counties who actually are not interested in expanding the rights of voters and making sure that every vote is counted. Therefore, I would like to know whether you are going to all the boards of supervisors in each county to give them a ready reckoner on why it's important to have one person, one vote, and every vote counted.
I take your point. Our charter is less about preventing suppression and more about giving tools to election officials so they can do the best possible job. We do sometimes get invited to talk to election commissions and to county election staff. And when we do, we immediately take up those invitations and do whatever we can to increase their skills and capabilities. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for all your great work. I was just
Thank
wondering.
you for your great
Oh,
work.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you've ever looked at county seals. I've been lately looking at my county seal, and I could barely figure out like what the image was of, and especially when it's shrunk down really small.
Right.
And I looked at some of the other county seals, and they also are really hard to make out, especially online. I just wonder if it's something you've looked at, whether you think there's a need for government in general, because that seal is so important. It tells people this is an official document, but they seem all really old-timey. So I want to get your take on that.
It is kind of the mark of approval, isn't it? I mean, it shows that it is an authority. It comes from an authority that is a government. No, we haven't really looked at. We have not tested or done research around government seals. I personally find them fascinating, and for some of them, it's not a bad thing that they're tiny and inscrutable because they're pretty bad. We do a lot of work with Virginia, and if you go look at the Virginia state seal, like, I don't know why they haven't changed that because it's not cool. It shows, yeah. Yeah, everybody go Google it now. But that would be a fun thing to do. So if we can get a grant to work on that together, that would be awesome.
I wanted to ask to see if the PowerPoint that you showed about the polling place, I'm trying to see it in a millennial kind of way to where we have plenty of do-it-yourself videos, instructional videos, to where you do it in the format to where it's easy, plain language. I love that. But is there a way that you can show us also how to do it yourself to the poll workers, the show and tell, the instructions where to put the materials? And everybody has a smartphone now. Technology's everywhere. Is that something that you guys are going to move forward to?
Yeah, if we could get funding, we could go digital on all of the things, especially since going to a vote center model, there's so much more technology in the polling place generally. And we do know that there are jurisdictions that are using our basic model of role-based, task-oriented checklists and making apps out of them. And so I'm hoping that they'll open those up and share them too. I bet they will. So yeah, but we're looking at that kind of stuff all the time. Funding. Yes.
Douglas Town, National Chairman, Disability Relations Group. I have been following your work. We have been following your work.
You're stalking me.
Just a quick question. In the voter guides and all the things that you've done, have you also given thought to and assistance to counties about how to communicate effectively with people with disabilities at all levels, whether it be in the polling place or at home, voter guides, all of those kinds of things?
That's a really great question. We do work with jurisdictions a lot on accessibility generally. And in some cases, we have worked with some jurisdictions on how they train their poll workers to work with voters who have disabilities. It hasn't been a while. We try to build it into everything that we do, but we haven't, I don't think, really developed a specific set of best practices around that. So that's a really beautiful idea. Thank you.
I just want to piggyback on that because it would be best to have someone from the disability community to assist with that. That's what I find is most effective.
Yep. Yeah, we're fortunate to have a couple of people who are regular collaborators with us one of whom is a blind UX or coder type person who works on projects with us regularly. But we are also always reaching out to larger communities. So someday we'll be able to afford to have a wide range of staff permanently in the center. But in the meantime, we bring collaborators on all the time. So that's a great idea too. Okay.
Hi, I'm Erin
Hi,
from
Erin.
Contra Costa County, and we've enjoyed using your tools that you provide. And in our world, we're more and more looking at iconography. And I couldn't help but wonder, your checklist that you have for poll workers, could you even simplify that? More iconography for poll workers? Because I think that's what we're doing in our guide. There's certain things, certain images that we want to highlight. And because there's, as you saw that checklist that you had there were like 15 things
Yep.
to do. And we're trying to.
Yeah, you should see the supervisor one.
Well, yeah, but see, that's just the thing, sometimes depending on the skills, what's going on in at closing time, for example, the task could be further divided, and we just train everybody to know everything, and of course not in the hopes that somebody will get most of it, but I'm just curious about that because there's still a lot of text in that, and we're trying to isolate, identify certain icons. What are our priorities perhaps, and there are other things that are almost become kind of a wish list that our poll workers will do.
Yeah, I'm really excited about you guys trying this out because what you're doing is actually really hard. This has been tried before in a couple of different domains. One is in software. So if you use a computer at all and you will see that there are icons, but they always come with labels because the images don't always work cross-culturally. That is really hard to get to. So if you guys can master that, I would love to talk with you some more about that. For step-by-step procedures, anybody who's put together a piece of IKEA furniture, yeah. It is a thing that people actually brag about mastering because it's not easy to do. And so that is IKEA can pull this off because it's furniture and there are certain behaviors and activities that you have to do to assemble furniture. When you are setting up a polling place, you're doing everything from setting up furniture to plugging stuff in and making sure that it runs. And so turning that into pictures exclusively is a really big challenge. I would like to take that challenge on. So if you want to work together, if there's something that we can do to help you on that, we would love to. So thank you, everybody.